Hi, welcome to Arts Alive. I'm Walt Haight, and if you're seeing my visage here on Arts Alive, you know that means one thing. We're going to be talking about theater. And today we're going to be talking about the next production at Gallery Theater called Puffs. So get your paper and pencil out because you're going to have to jot down a couple of dates. And with me here today to talk about Puffs is one of the cast members of that show, Mary Smalley Acuff. And Mary, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, before we talk about Puffs, I want to find out a little bit more about you. So if you could just give us a little bit of a biography. Where are you from? How long have you been in McMinnville? How long have you been doing gallery shows? Take it away, Mary.
Yeah, I'm originally from Portland, Oregon, but I went to Linfield. And while I was there, I did some shows at Gallery, and I made some really good friends. And I just decided when I was done with school that I was going to stay in McMinnville, mostly for Gallery, but it's also a really great place to live.
Now, if memories, I know we've been in more than a few productions together down there. Was White Christmas
the Mystery of Edwin Drood was in March of 2015. Was my first official show at Gallery.
Well, I do remember that in White Christmas, that you had one of the best roles in the show. You got to be the dancing box of Oxidol soap from a 1950s television commercial. Of course, you remember. Did you make that costume?
I didn't. We rented them from someone else that had done the show, like a little bit before us. But I remember that. I have pictures of it. That was one of my favorite shows, and the costumes in that were amazing. That one specifically.
Now, you of course are a fairly constant presence down at Gallery Theater. I'm trying to think of, since the pandemic, have you been more or less down there at one time or another for a show without much of a break?
Yeah, during 2020 I didn't do a lot of the online stuff that they were doing, but in 21 we did All Together Now. So I was a part of that, and then in last year I did a couple things. I did costumes for Christmas Carol last winter, and since then I've pretty much been working on everything up until now.
Well, that's fantastic. It's a blessing to have someone like yourself who is pretty much kind of a jack of all trades down there. You've worked on costumes. You've worked on assistant directing. You've been in shows. If they need a dancer, you're there as a dancer. So it's great that you're so fully involved in Gallery Theater. So let's talk about Puffs. Now, you'll notice here that we're wearing a specific color on the show, and that is, of course, because Puffs is a story about a certain house, school, at a school of magic from a very popular series of books and movies. And so that would suggest strongly that you are from the house of Hufflepuff. We don't use the Huffle. we don't use the Huffle word here.
Cut that out.
I don't want to get sued. No, we don't want to get sued. So Puffs. Yes. So I'd like to know more. Tell me about this play, about this story.
So it's about a group of kids that they are wizards, and they can do magic, and they go to the school specifically for magic, and they're there for 7 years, from when they're 11 until they're 18. And it mostly focuses on the Puffs, which is kind of the house that is just the rest of the kids, because we have the other houses. We have the Braves, we have the Smarts, and then we have the Snakes, which kind of tend to be a little more on the evil side, I guess. But the Puffs are just kind of everybody else. People say that they're the worst, say that they're dumb, but you really get to learn who they really are, and that they're so much more than just that. And yeah, it's really funny. It's very farcical, but there's also a lot of heart in it, and we definitely lean into the heart.
So now, the plot itself, are we following the the Puffs adventures as they relate to what's going on in the traditional series of books?
That we are not connected to at all.
That we are not connected to at all.
Yeah, so there's other things that are happening kind of off stage that are these like big events and big crazy things that are happening, and it's kind of just around the Puffs. Like they're not really involved in it. It's just like, oh, this thing happened. Oh, okay, well, we're just here.
So is it then implied that the audience probably knows what they're talking about when they're talking about some of the things that are going on?
Yes, there are
outside
some
the confines of their walls?
key events that happen in Puffs that some people will recognize if they know the story.
Great. Well, I think I read where it opened, either was it Broadway or off-Broadway, around 2015.
Yeah, it's very recent.
So it's a pretty recent show. I had never even heard of it before I, it got on the gallery schedule.
Yeah.
So let's chat a little bit about some of the other people who are in this cast. And guess what? I brought the list, so I can read off of this list as far as who's in it. Basically, we're kind of talking in this case about a lot of, let's call them known gallery performers. I think there's a few who might be in their first, not their first, but maybe their second or third or something like that.
People.
But I see a few veterans on there. It looks like we have Seth Rennie.
Yes.
And who's he? And he's playing.
He's playing Wayne Hopkins, so he's one of the main trio. There's a main trio of characters, 2 boys, 1 girl. That it's kind of the main characters of the show, and then everyone else kind of around them, little side characters coming in and out.
So along with Seth, would the others? Let's see. I think we've got Soren Smithred, who we just saw in Pride and Prejudice.
Yes, as Mary.
Mary, one of the sisters. And then we have Hannah Wolf, who we saw last in Into the Woods.
Yes, as the witch, and she was fantastic.
She was absolutely fantastic in Into the Woods, and you were part of that.
Yeah, I ran the lights for that one.
part of that show too. And also we have Sean Brady, who Pride and Prejudice, I think, was his last appearance.
Yes,
right?
and it was his first show at Gallery, so this is his second one. And he's the narrator, so it's kind of like he's reading the story of the Puffs.
Okay.
It's kind of his role.
Okay, so he's the narrator. And then Nehemiah Creel is in it, and we've seen him in several things. Going back to, I think, Mamma Mia might have been his first show, and then he was also in Pride and Prejudice.
Yes, and Into the Woods, he was the baker.
And Into the Woods, he's the baker. And he's also involved in another production company that we do occasionally talk about here. And in fact, I had Nehemiah on the show to talk about Penguin Productions some time back. And so he's very involved locally in theater. And well, then there's Megan Reed, of course.
Amazing, as always.
Yeah, Megan's been in a few shows. I think one of the last ones we were in together, we did Noises Off right before the pandemic.
Oh, I remember that one.
And this was the weird thing about not Into the Woods, but Noises Off. It was the last show before the pandemic hit. And the very last line in the very last show is the entire cast saying blackout. And then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
But since then, Megan has also been in Barefoot in the park, and she was in Into the Woods, and she was pretty noticeable in Pride and Prejudice.
She was.
She was indeed. And we have Brandon Molina, and he's he was in Peter and the Starcatcher some time back, but
and
he's also involved in another theater. He's involved with Penguin?
Yes, he just did 12th Night this summer, and he will be in Almost Maine in January.
Almost Maine. Oh, that's
one of my favorite shows.
That is absolutely a show I'm looking forward to seeing. So yeah, so Brandon, he's been involved here, and he's also been involved in other theaters. Stephanie Gibbs, who was Sound of Music, she played Maria.
Yeah.
I gotta say, the last time, no, it was two times ago, the Maria was about 7 months pregnant by the time the show
Oh,
ended.
really?
Right. So they were really,
Oh my goodness.
they were really trying to hide the fact that
Wow.
Marie's a little, obviously a bit in the.
See, it happens in live theater too, not just on TV.
But yeah, that's been a while since that happened.
Yeah, she was also Cinderella in Into the Woods.
Ah, yes, and of course, and her husband, Garrett,
is the director, and they're the ones, they run Penguin together. So
right.
She was also in 12th Night and will also be in Almost Maine.
Right. And before we get to you, Betsy LeClaire is in there, also in the show, and she's been in a few gallery shows. Going back quite a ways, we did, I don't think it was Dearly Departed, but it was something like Dearly Departed. That was kind of a reader's theater show.
You said Dearly Departed.
Was it Dearly?
Yeah.
Was it Dearly Departed?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they just start adding up.
I can't remember if that was before or after Music Man, but I think Music Man may have been the last full production that she did at Gallery. But she's also been at Penguin the last 2 years. She was at school. She went to Southern Oregon. So she kind of took a little bit of a break from up here theater because she was in school.
Right.
And
she
and Seth are also doing costumes.
Okay.
And she's the one who is painting the set. And it looks great.
And I see that Joseph is also in the show, and he's been, I mean, he goes back to Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast was his first one.
It's his first show, yep. That's right. And then we have Mary Smalley Acuff, and tell me about your character.
So my main character's name is Sally Perks. She's kind of shy and awkward, but she kind of breaks out of her shell a little bit later in the show. And all of the big ensemble people, besides the main four of Seth, Soren, Hannah, and Sean, we all have multiple different characters that we go in and out of. So I've got about 5. I think the most, either Megan or Nehemiah, they have 10 to 12 different characters. So there's a lot of costume changes, some costume changes happening very, very quickly, where somebody exits over here as one character and then pops up over here 30 seconds later as someone else. I've got a couple of those.
I seem to recall doing something like that in Reefer Madness. I think I must have.
Yes, I do remember that.
I think I played about a dozen characters in that, and that was absolutely a blast. Well, now let's get down to the nuts and bolts.
Yes.
As I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, have your pencil and paper handy. Let's talk about the dates of the show.
Yes, we open on Friday, October 20th, and we run through Sunday, November 5th.
Okay.
Our Fridays and Saturdays are at 7:30, house opens at 7, and then Sunday matinees are now at 2 o'clock, and the house opens at 1:30.
2 o'clock, okay, 2 o'clock, and we also now, as I think I've mentioned to you before in previous broadcasts, that we now end the show on a matinee.
It's so nice.
It really is nice.
First strike, it makes it so nice.
That's right, because at Gallery Theater, of course, when the show closes, when it used to close on Saturday nights, you could be there till 3 in the morning striking that set. And now, of course, you get done on a Sunday afternoon and you still have time to have a party afterwards.
Yep.
So again, we're talking about October 20th to November 5th for Puffs, the next production. Again, if you want to, definitely you'll want to get tickets early because our shows have been, they've been selling out.
Yes, and this one is in the small theater, so there's even more limited tickets. I think we have about 80 seats.
Right. And of course, you can get tickets. You can call the box office at 503-472-2227.
Nice.
Thank you. Or you can get it online. You can buy tickets online at www.thetheater.com. Gallery Theater, one word, .org. So, Mary, it's been wonderful to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh,
it's been fun.
Thank you for coming down. I'm really looking forward to this show.
It's going to be great.
Because, I mean, I read all of those books, and so I think I'm pretty familiar.
Yeah, I think people are going to have fun, and that's what Garrett said. He wants people to come expecting to have fun and leaving with a smile.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you again for being here with me today. And for MCM, I'll see you at the theater.